there was an article, and it was partly satirical about how women take baths like to recharge, like your bath. I gotta take a bath. Like I gotta take a bath.
I'll be fine
I'll
after
be
a
fine
bath.
after a bath.
After Caledon takes me away.
Exactly. I'm gonna go soak. And she made this point in this piece about how you're essentially sitting in a coffin-sized tub of water of your own filth.
Such a lovely thought the next time I bathe.
Here's what's worse about this particular story. I read that article while taking a bath.
Welcome, Lindas.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome to a couple of Lindas, because we're all just a bunch of Lindas out here trying to figure out life, and what better way to do it than via libations and Conversation.
Yes.
Yay. On this episode, we've, you know what? I should actually introduce myself. I always forget to do that. Hi, I'm Desiree, your host, and I'm joined with Rachel, who, you've probably been on the most episodes out
Seriously?
of everyone. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I love how you just let it all out.
That sounds a lot better than go deep,
Yeah.
which is what you said
I know.
last time.
When I was editing, I was like, oh, God.
Let it all out.
Let it all out.
Yeah.
You're just honest and authentic.
Thank you. I try.
And we are joined with Amy. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Hi, welcome. So let's start off with, what is putting a smile on your face today?
Okay, I'll go.
We're all staring at her.
So I'm relatively new to Cookeville, and I'm pleasantly surprised by the people that I've met here and the things that I found here. I did not expect Tennessee in general, because I'm from the West and I'd never been to the East before, but I didn't expect a smaller community in the Southeast to be what it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
It does.
I mean, that's what's often said about this town and this community.
Aren't you from a state that had more cattle than people?
Yeah, I'm from Wyoming, so that's that doesn't really count. But I have since lived in other places. So I recently moved here from Houston, which also has a lot of cattle, but it's the fourth largest city. So and before that, I lived in Phoenix, so I spent a little bit more time in other places
Than just cattle.
Yeah.
Cattle town.
But so I had this vision in my mind of what Tennessee was going to be like, and it was all mullets and trucks
and more cattle,
Confederate flags with guns, and more cattle, but without their teeth.
Right.
So,
and see, that's kind of why I wanted to start this podcast, is to show that, like, not all Southerners are this, caricature that you see everywhere else. We're all barefoot and mullety and like racist as hell. I mean,
I've
a
had
lot of
a
us are
mullet.
racist. You have had a mullet.
too. I was 2 when I had it.
That was a lot longer ago than mine. I wish I could say it was when I was 2.
It was 2 weeks ago. Ma'am.
I really feel kind of bad that I had that vision of what it would be, but it's really not.
Yeah.
Don't feel bad.
It's so artsy, and I really like it here.
Good.
I'm kind of,
Yeah.
I'm happy about it.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Rachel, what's putting a smile on your face?
Okay, so I was obviously on the podcast last week with my pops.
Daddy issues.
That's right, for daddy issues. And we were able to sit down and have that conversation while my parents were visiting. They spent a few days here. And I got a text from my dad after he listened to the episode to tell me that my sister had also listened to the episode, and that he was really happy that we'd had the conversation. Felt like it went really well. Felt like it actually was something that he wished we had done before, which we've had a number of intense conversations, but in that way where it was really more of a give and take. And then also said that my sister reached out to him and was like, it was really meaningful to hear you be honest about all of those things, like about the way that you grew up, and be honest about the way that we grew up and some of your feelings about raising us. after the divorce and all of that. So that really has put a smile on my face a lot, just because, as he said, we did go through some really rough and difficult times. And so to hear that it has sort of reached out in my family in a really quiet way. He's still kind of keeping it real low key. He doesn't want everybody in the world to know that he did the podcast.
Yeah.
But that for a small circle of my family to actually have been touched by it in the way that they were, was pretty great. So
Good.
For those of you who listened to last week's episode, if you heard the rattling in the fridge and all of the noises of also quiet drinking, my stepmom was also in the room for part of it and was very touched a few times. It was pretty emotional a couple of times, which I'm not sure you could hear, at least in the background. But it meant a lot to our circle, to our family, in a way that I don't think we really expected it to, which was pretty cool.
I mean, that's the thing about conversation and having honest conversations is that, there is that positive outcome. It may start out as this negative topic, or you may perceive it as like, oh God, I don't want to have this conversation. But once you do, there's like all of this weight lifted. And also, you can find, I don't know, I don't want to sound all like, you can find deeper meaning. But I mean, you do. I mean, that's why I end up having like the deepest conversations with people, like strangers that I meet like out and about. And because I just dive in because I'm like, I'm bored with, talking about, frivolous things. I'm like, hey, tell me about your relationship to your father.
You also aren't dancing around baggage, which it takes practice to not dance around baggage with people that you know really well, right? Like your pops.
Yeah. Like you mean to not actually address it, just kind of.
Yeah, to kind of talk around it, you know, to sort of assume that everybody knows, that everybody's kind of coming from the same like place, level playing field, whatever. And to kind of not walk back through it, I guess. But, kind of putting aside those assumptions and having that conversation is pretty meaningful. Yeah.
Awesome. What's putting a smile on my face this week is that I am in the midst of planning a trip to Asheville, North Carolina with some dear friends of mine. My favorite things to do are just to go places and eat all the things and take in all the art and drink all the delicious things. So I'm pretty pumped about this. Something that I often do, here lately, the last year or so, what I've been doing, purely experimental, is, I'll get on a Tinder, I'll get on an OkCupid to just kind of see, experiment, see what's up, see, who I match with, connect with, or, whatever. And it's always fascinating to see what particular cities I get crickets in versus cities that like, my shit blows up. So the first time I did it was in DC during the Women's March. So, I mean, obviously it's going to blow up because everyone's there. But then when I was in Barcelona and Madrid, when I was in Spain, period, I got nothing. It was all crickets. Like maybe one when I was in Barcelona. When I was in Paris, I got a couple of hits. And then when I was in Chicago, I got a good number of hits. And then when I was in Savannah, though, I got nothing.
Really?
Nothing at all. Like one, maybe?
All those bachelorette parties like we talked about.
Well, they're, hetero, allegedly.
Allegedly.
I've never been there.
It's
to Savannah or hetero?
Hetero.
Yeah, to Savannah.
Never been hetero. But, heading to Asheville, shit's been blowing up, which is awesome. Yeah. But, again, like I said, it's a social experiment.
I like that experiment.
Well, I mean,
Amy, what are you trying to say?
No, I just think it's interesting, actually, like to find out where things blow up for you.
Yeah.
Because it can be different. It can be different in different places with different people.
Because I was just watching, do you ever watch a show, have you ever watched a show Blackish?
I have.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
So it's a really great show, and there was a spin-off, kind of like Cosby spin-off. There was a different world. They have a spin-off with the oldest daughter called Grownish. And she's off in college. She's at a liberal arts college, which is predominantly white, and she's kind of hanging out with a bunch of folks of color. That's her cohort. And this past week's episode was about dating as a Black woman, where on statistically studies show that people are not looking on apps. People are not looking for Black women, and they're not looking for like Asian men. All the different little stereotypes, and then most people are like yes to white women, and yes to Asian women, and then everybody else kind of falls in the middle. But yeah, I've always kind of known that about being a Black woman. There's like all of these stereotypes and stigmas that are just automatically attached to you, because you're gonna be angry, or you're gonna be having a lot of attitude, or all this stuff, and it's not true. And so the episode was just talking about these two twins who are just kind of like filling everybody in, like, yo, this is my experience, and everyone's like, what are you talking about? So it was just a really interesting episode, really good episode. That show pay attention to that show, Grownish, because they're getting
to watch that.
They're getting into some topics like the shit that these kids are going through in college. I'm like, honey, I was like drinking Capri Sun compared to what y'all are doing. Y'all are popping Adderall at 11 o'clock in the morning. Youth today. The youths. Kind of like that show Skins. Did you ever watch Skins? Which was a BBC show, and then they tried to do a US version, but it was like...
What was it about?
It was about youth culture in the UK. And it was these students who were probably anywhere from 18 to 21, and just kind of going through their lives where it's like, they're partying, there's drugs, there's drinking, there's dating. It just kind of goes through like what it actually is like to be a teen. It's not this like cookie cutter, like everything's, kosher, that you see in the US shows and sitcoms. This is like they're dealing with some real shit. And so that's why I kind of started this experiment, because, I've not had the best luck with dating in Tennessee. I've mentioned before. Well, specifically Nashville. Cookeville actually fare better, which is completely strange. But so I was like, what? This is, kind of interesting. And so it's just always fun to see, like, looking at, like, I don't know, the stereotypes of a city, how it plays in, the demographics of that said city. Obviously a Black woman or myself would do well in DC, Chocolate City. I probably would do well in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So on that assumption, I thought, Savannah, like a lot of gay people are in Savannah or whatever. But to clarify, it's a lot of gay men. Yeah. Whereas Asheville has always been, slated as like a lesbian mecca. I remember being in college 10 years ago. It's like, Asheville's like, les mecca or whatever.
I've never heard that.
I haven't either. What?
Yeah, my husband used to make fun of me because I always wanted to move to Asheville. It's one of my favorite cities in the world, and he would always say, "Yeah, you just want to hang out, like sit and like bang on your bongo drums." And, like, he always associated it with like
pretty much. I mean, it's definitely a lot of that. It's artists.
Lesbian Mecca, good to know.
Lesbian Mecca. I don't know if it's quite how it used to be like in the 90s or early 2000s, but I mean, it's still a pretty like queer counterculture kind of community.
Do you set like parameters on those dating apps? Like, I've never been on anything like that.
No, Tinder is just based on your location services, like where you are within like however many mile radius.
Literally proximity.
Tinder is straight up proximity.
I didn't know that.
Fascinating way to actually meet people.
I
then.
think that's really interesting. Like,
wow.
I mean, because when you were talking about the demographics of things, I felt like I did not fare well in Wyoming. I feel like I didn't fit in.
Yeah.
But too many cattle.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't fit in with the cows. But once I left, I felt more comfortable, like, because I guess apparently for there, I was weird. I felt weird,
So if we're not dating, they need to like get like Friender. Right.
So you can find friends,
interesting, cool people.
Not to be confused with Friendster. I mean, most
you don't want to fuck. Right?
Well, most of the time, like, so I was reading. So what started actually was I was reading an article when I was traveling to Europe for the first time, and I was going to be on my own for a leg of it. It was like, hey, like, use Tinder just to kind of like meet locals, maybe meet up for a drink or whatever. Like, no big deal. And so I did that, and I actually ended up meeting up with a woman in Paris and for coffee, like the day that I was leaving, and it was just really cool. But yeah, it's a way to just kind of connect while you're out traveling without just kind of meeting someone at the hotel bar. But yeah, it's because of being a queer woman of color, it's interesting to see who is actually is a taker.
Yeah.
Of that, because that's like such a, I've heard like, oh, it's like the three strikes, you're a woman, you're black, and you're queer, but it seems to have worked out pretty well for me. But moving on.
You're living your best life.
Just out here living my best life.
Going to Asheville, going to great city.
So let's get into the show topic. Self-care. So Rachel, you posted something a little while ago that really struck with me, and I ended up reposting it because it felt like the term self-care had been monopolized, and people think that like they have mistaken self-care with treat yourself. And I mean, that could be a part of it, but like binging Netflix, watching ice cream is not necessarily self-care. Really and truly, it's like, yeah, it's a nice break, and you're just kind of it's a relaxation strategy, but it's not technically self-care. Self-care is the hard shit. It's the recognizing the stuff you need to work on in your own personal life to to do better. It's the kind of thing like maybe going to a psychiatrist, getting your financial life together, getting your career moving. You can't just stick with living in your folks' basement for forever. It's the hard stuff that you actually have to really focus on. So that's what I kind of wanted to talk about, because I'm always about like, what can I be doing better. And I also am I'm not only just having hard conversations with other people, I'm having them with myself as well, because who else is gonna make me better but me? And who else is going to make you better but you? And that's only if you are actually willing to be better or do better. And so I wanted to talk to the two of you because, just from my, interactions from you, I can see that you are, all the time, working and finding these little ways to just like, honey, I need help. I need, and actually making that happen for yourself. And, we're so spammed with all of these like, social media gurus and all these people that look like they've got their lives together and all this stuff. And you feel like I couldn't possibly be that. And it's like, what? It's not even about that. Honestly, it's about the journey of getting there. And so I want to talk to the two of you about, your journey. Like, what made you wake up one day and be like, shit, I need to get my life together?
The first thing that did it, honestly, and this is going to sound totally random, but when my little was teeny tiny, like littler, I used to get the New Yorker, and there was this piece in there. I think it was, I need to actually look up the citation. It was called like Calgon Take Me Away or something like that, based on that old tagline from, is Calgon still around?
I haven't seen it for a long time.
Rocking the aisles in the Dollar General,
for a long time.
Or did Bath and Body Works run them out of business? I don't know.
Probably.
But yeah, there was an article, and it was partly satirical about how women take baths like to recharge. Like your bath. I gotta take a bath. Like I gotta take a bath.
I'll be fine after a bath. After Calgon takes me away.
Exactly. I'm gonna go soak. And she made this point in this piece about how you're essentially sitting in a coffin-sized tub of water of your own filth.
Such a lovely thought the next time I bathe.
I know.
I'm glad there's bubbles in there.
And that the patriarchy, the hetero patriarchy, right, has taught us that our place as women is to hide in the bathtub in a coffin-sized tub of our own filth.
Oh my God.
Wow.
And I used to be somebody that loved taking baths. And I mean, I still like to take a bath every now and again. I like getting a good soak. Like, I'm probably going to do that tonight because it's been a rough day of like getting kicked by my toddler. But it made me really think about the fact that like when I am seeking out solace, I go to bath products that have been marketed to me, and I hide in a bathroom where people take a shit. I hide in a bathroom where people take a shit
In your own filth.
in my own filth. And that was the first time that I was like, oh my God. Like I literally here's what's worse about this particular story. I read that article while taking a bath.
I love that so much. I can't even say. That's awesome.
Please tell me there was a, what is it? Live, laugh, love.
Was there a sign?
Oh, come on. You've seen my bathroom art. You know me better than that. No live, laugh, love. But yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there was like a Whole Foods bath bomb, involved. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Every now and again, it's really great to watch that little, fucker fizz, right?
At least it was organic.
Yeah, at least it wasn't like a chemical shitstorm. So kudos to you.
But that was the first time I was like, oh my God. I'm literally putting myself in a position where I am doing things to take care of myself that I've been socially conditioned to do to take care of myself, which put me in nobody's way, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Wow,
Like,
you just smacked my senses with a whole new outlook on things. Like,
I'm sorry.
no, but this is
that's
good.
what it's about.
Yeah, this is good.
That was the first time.
Because I think that's true.
Yeah. Here, I'm literally going to remove myself, from anybody's way in order to
Bathe in my own filth.
Yeah.
What about you, Amy?
Self-care.
What got me to the point where I was like, I need to do something about myself.
Or what was the first time you did something you're like, yes, all right, I need to do this for me?
I guess my situation is a lot different. It's a lot more intense. Maybe not more intense, but just like, I've been messed up for my entire life. So I think there was one point when I was in college, I took on way more than I should have. And I got an email from my professor because I was taking a class that was way over my head. And my professor was like, you will never go to graduate school. You will never do this if you don't do this. And I lost it. I lost my shit.
Yeah.
And I just started crying and puking and I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
So I ended up dropping out. It was my last semester of my senior year. I dropped out. I moved to another state and I got a degree in psychology instead to figure my shit out. So I think that was a turning point where, I'm done with feeling this shitty. I'm done with doing stuff. I really need to dig deep and find out what the hell is going on in my brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that was the moment, I guess, for me.
Yeah. I mean, we all have our shit. We're all out here collecting baggage and asking if we can check. And it's like, honey, there's not enough room on the plane for all of this. You're going to leave some of it.
There's a lot of plane themes. I keep feeling with this, like the baggage, the oxygen, the divulging things to strangers, feeling comfortable with strangers because you don't have any baggage or anything to worry about when you talk with them.
Talk about the oxygen mask. That was before we started recording.
Like one thing is if you don't take care of yourself, how can you take care of someone else? So like on the airplane, they always tell you if the oxygen drops, put it on yourself before you assist the child. Because you can't take care of somebody else if you're, passed out. If you're not there.
Exactly.
You can't put it on your child. You can't help anyone if you haven't helped yourself.
And as women, we're so expected to take care of everyone else around us. And, rarely do we get a partner that fully, takes care of us, in that way that we do for them. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I guess for me, it probably started the first time it happened. I was in college. It was the story I talked about my father passing away. That's when I started looking at I was thin back then. I had a little little tiny little waist like you do when you're 20, 19 years old. Anywho, but I started changing the way I ate, and I started working out. And so, it's been almost, I guess, 15 years that I've been kind of doing that, although like the waist has expanded a little bit. But that was the first time that I was like, oh, well, here's something that's kind of tangible that I can do, because my father's, he had like some kidney issues for a number of years. And so I just wanted to make sure that I was like, just kind of, good, running upright. And then that translated into thinking about how I responded to things, because I would feel like, damn, that was an irrational response to that. What was that about? And I remember probably the one that I, use as a reference, and I kind of have to use with partners a lot, just kind of give them like, hey, when you see me do this, this is what that's about. Speaking of daddy issues, I remember having a conversation or just kind of thinking about like if we have plans to do something and you don't give me a heads up that it's going to change, or it's just kind of like 5 minutes before you're supposed to get there and like, oh, well, I don't feel like doing it. It's definitely more of like when I'm dating someone that it's an issue. When it's friends, like I get it, like, yeah, things happen. But when you're like more emotionally invested in someone, I take it more to heart when you like consistently change plans. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I was sitting thinking about like, why did I have that visceral response to that person? And it's because, growing up, my parents divorced when I was, like a baby. And so, but my dad would be like, oh yeah, I'm going to come pick you up and like take you to Chuck E. Cheese or whatever. And I'm like, yes. And so I'd be like all pumped and like, I'd be like, getting ready, and I would be kind of sitting outside and just kind of like waiting. And then, either he would not come or he would like, call later and then be like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna make it. And so I would just be like, oh my God,
that sucks.
So, I have carried that on. Yes. So whenever I'm like kind of, excited about doing something with a friend and not something that like, if something else comes up, like something's going on, like I totally get that. But when you just kind of like, yeah, I don't feel like doing it. Yeah. Or like you have like just some ridiculous response, reasoning for it. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is not going to fly with me. If you know that you're not up for it, please let me know earlier, so that I don't, spiral.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But the fact that I recognize that in myself and then I'm able to communicate that. A lot of people don't take that time to be like, yo, that was real irrational. Why did I do that?
Yeah.
And so is that something that you felt that you've kind of, started doing with yourself as well?
Yeah, it's part of it. Like you don't erase, like I think I said this verbatim last week, like you don't erase the baggage from growing up. You don't erase the baggage from past relationships. Man, am I learning that one.
It just comes along or manifests in a different way. And you're like, oh, honey,
shit.
Where did that come from? Oh, right.
And then you have to look at why like you're talking about, why you reacted that way. That's part of self-care, is actually leaning in and going, how do I take care of myself in a way where I can continue to have good relationships with other human beings too? And be able to voice those needs to other people. I am not really good at taking care of myself.
You are excellent at taking care of everyone else, though.
Yeah, that's been the trap I've fallen into.
Yeah.
So I work really hard. Perhaps what you're talking about was the jumping off point, going, okay, well, I'm failing at taking care of other people. Or I'm failing at communicating my needs because I don't know myself, right? And so I got more serious about that around the time of the bathtub sitch. I had like a day where I went out. It was in the summer. The weather was warm. Like I should have been fine. Like everything should have been all good. And I left the house by myself for a little bit, left my teeny tiny at home, and, went into things that would have usually made me happy, which was wandering around in the plant nursery because I have a thing for plants. Like, Oh, girl, I have a thing for plants. Oh, I have a thing for plants.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right, tuck it in.
I know. I need to calm down.
Tuck that in. All right.
Love the showy sexual parts.
Okay.
I know.
All right.
I know. I did zip up my jacket at least. But anyway, all those things should have been making me happy, right? That was my version of, what do they call it? Retail therapy, right? Would have been going and buying plants. Nothing was making me feel better. And that's when I called and made an appointment with a therapist that I still see.
You're like 911.
Something is wrong. Something is crucially wrong.
Yeah, my usual isn't working.
My usual isn't working, but that's because my usual was the wrong tools. I had the wrong tools in my toolbox. My usual was not healthy. My usual, again, was what I was told was socially acceptable to have as my usual self-care.
It was a mask.
It was a mask, yeah, a mud mask that some bitch at the, it was
dirty
counter sold me, right? Like it was not, but seriously, it was not actually what I needed. And luckily, in that moment, I knew myself well enough. It had been about 5 years since I'd seen a therapist, and I knew myself well enough that, all right, it's time to go back.
Yep.
It's time to go back before I'm all the way in the turlet. Now, I was pretty far down the turlet without realizing, I was.
Turlet. Is
Sorry,
that your
toilet.
South Carolina showing?
Actually, my dad used to call it that.
Yeah.
He still does.
Still calls it turlet. That's
Yeah. It's so funny.
Nobody has hit the flush button yet. But I mean, like one more step and I would have been gone. I mean, I've been gone,
Yeah. I've been there.
And I started getting a little more serious and then got healthier. And as I got healthier, part of what you're talking about with my relationship with other people and starting to ask for what I needed caused some of my relationships to shift and change in a way that other people weren't happy with.
Yeah.
And hello, here we are, right? That's oversimplification. I mean, there's other things too, but that was a part of it. So for me, self-care was a real learning experience, and exactly what Amy was talking about. If I don't have the oxygen mask on, it's only gonna last so long,
Yeah.
I feel like it's the most badass thing to look at yourself. I really do, because it's hard. It's really hard, and most people don't do it. Because I read somewhere once, I say this all the time, I read somewhere once that how can you fix yourself with the thing that's broken? Like, so if your brain is all kinds of effed up, how do you use that very thing that's effed up to fix what's effed up? You can't,
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like at least making the effort to look at yourself and to look at what you've done to contribute to what's happening in your world is just so badass, I think, and I get so pissed off sometimes that it doesn't get the credit that I think it deserves, because I have the most respect for people who would do that, because it sucks and it's hard and it's almost impossible.
It's
really.
fear.
Yeah.
People are, afraid of what is underneath because, you try so hard to push it down so that you don't have to think about it or deal with it, but it manifests itself in other ways. And, it's either deal with it or continue spiraling or self-medicating, all these different things that are just expound upon what's actually bothering you. Just kind of, it doesn't help. You can eat yourself to death, drink yourself to death, drug yourself you can do all of these things. And you're only buying yourself time, but in the meantime, you're collecting interest.
That's a really good way to put it. I feel like, it's just compounding and compounding.
It's compounding, baby. And that's not the kind of compound interest I want to
Well, and that's what societally acceptable self-care is. It may not be eating yourself to death or drinking yourself to death, but it is
consumption,
eating bonbons.
Yeah,
it's consumption in general.
It's consumption
of Calgon or bonbons,
right? or even the package of massages, or whatever. And every now and again that stuff is
Manicures.
fine. But when you are one of the points in the piece that Desiree was talking about that I posted was if you are using self-care as a way to escape your actual life, you are doing it wrong.
Boom.
And that's what we wind up doing. We use these things to escape our actual life. It's like, well, I need some retail therapy because like I had a real shit day. And it's like, honey, sit down. Why did you have a shit day? And what can you actually do to make sure that a day like this doesn't happen again? Do you need to call a friend who also has a toddler who might be running around fucking naked in their house when you go to pick them up? Right. Like,
Yeah.
do you know, like, do you need to?
That sounded real specific, though.
Is your toddler running around naked today? Mine was.
Yours was. But like, do you have, like, is there some way that you can, in a healthy way, like, do you need to sit down and actually write in your journal? Not go out and buy yourself some pretty ass journal you're never going to write in, right? Because it's too fucking pretty. And bam, because that's all we have here is fucking bam. But do you need to actually sit down and journal and write out those feelings? Like, what is it that made this day shit? And how can we make tomorrow not shit rather than hiding from today?
That made me think of like, for me, like, because I really struggled with depression for most of my life and it got really bad at times. And one of the things that helped me the most was just to sit with my shit. Just sit in it. Sometimes roll around in it. And then after that, I'm like, I'm covered in shit.
Yeah. But
That's
you can
it.
shower and wash it off.
Yeah, that's how it is, you know. And as soon as you accept that you have shit and you allow yourself to be in that place, it seemed to alleviate some of the pressure. So I guess for me, a lot of self-care was sitting in shit.
Not literally, guys.
Not literally.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't any literal shit.
We're not proponents of scat.
Yeah.
But I do like that it rhymes.
Yeah. That's one of the things you and I've talked about a lot with you being like a psychology person and, you know, me doing religious studies. Is like we've talked about like that Buddhist premise of sitting with it. Rather than examining yourself and going, oh God, I'm really in the shit. Just going and then being upset about it. Right. Just going, this is where I am.
Yeah.
Yep.
It alleviates. Because when you try to push it away or hide it, it like we talked about earlier, it eventually comes out in one way or another. And it probably gets uglier and uglier the more you try to hide it and push it away, you know? But that's like you're talking about what's marketable as self-care. Sitting with shit is not marketable as self-care.
Nope. Unless
you'd like to go back to your Calgon thing in your bathtub and really think about sitting in your own filth. I mean, we could go there.
So do you think that self-care, like actual self-care, would be a balance between sitting with where you are and also planning to make things better?
That sounds great, I think.
I think so. And it's that first step of like, okay, here I am, recognizing it. And then so often people will make it to that step of like, okay, here I am, but then they'll wallow in it and they'll wallow in it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, because they feel like there's no way out, but there is.
Shit.
Yeah.
So the next step is an acceptance.
Acceptance.
You said the word balance. I think that's a really key word in this. You know, I mean, because ultimately nobody wants to be in shit all the time. No. You know, like
it depends. James Joyce was really into it. he wanted his wife Nora
to pee on him
to take a dump on his chest. Like he wrote her love letter after love letter after love letter about this. I'm serious. Hey y'all.
This is what I get for having academics on.
I'm really sorry. Hey y'all, go look up the love letters from James Joyce to his wife Nora and check it out.
Maybe there's some psychological reason behind that.
I think there probably is. Oh my gosh. Religious studies and psychology together. That's right. That was
okay.
a high five.
All right.
Sorry.
If y'all could stop with your mental masturbation.
I thought of it that way before, but that's kind of funny.
But yeah, so, you know, first step is recognizing it, sitting in it. Step 2, accepting it. Step 3, you know, start making steps towards getting out of it. So how does one do that? That is the tricky part. I don't know how I mean, with my stuff, I know I'm shit sometimes, you know, but I own it. And I usually end up apologizing for it eventually.
Me too.
Once I get the guts up to do, I'm like, all right, here we go. Hey, sorry about me being shit. Yeah. So I know when I think about like things that bother me, it's, I think I'm privileged in a way that like there is rarely any family drama. Like I've got, considering, my mom, my brother, we're like really close knit, and it's just, and we're all kind of even keel. So there's just like, there's that safety net of just in the back of my head, I'm like, oh man, at least I got that.
Yeah.
So when I do get upset, it's usually about, probably dating. Like I know you guys have, been married or been with partners for, a pretty long time, and you got your own little bag of stuff there, Rachel.
Bag of stuff.
However, having not had, terribly long relationships, it is something that kind of stays in my mind, especially as I, reach ever closer to 40. It's like, oh my God, no. I'm going to die alone. Cool. I think about that, and then I try to learn from past relationships, and I realize I remember the moments that I realized like, oh, I was shit, and that thinking I was just being like a regular person. I wasn't doing anything vindictive, but then realizing like, oh, but I wasn't actually putting in the effort though. And so, the moments where I realized that, and then like, okay, all right, well, shit, let me like, I don't know, research or like look up some Google articles about like, how to be, because yeah, where do you begin? There's not like a whole, like, I'm going to sign up for a class, how not to be a shit partner. It's life, it's experience. And since that relationship, I've continued to like, be shit in different ways.
But at least you've covered with the other ways.
Yeah. Like each time I'm like, all right, cool. I have fixed that one.
Yeah.
However,
I'm currently being a little bit of a shit in my and like in a relationship. And one of the things Amy was saying to me in the car is she's like, hey, this is on the way over here. Hey, but you realize it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a step in itself. Like that, there's step one.
Step one, realize it.
You realize it when you're doing it now, rather than like looking back, like retroactively. Like in the moment you go, or like even, 30 seconds later or the same day or whatever, you go, oh shit.
Oh my God, that's what
and that's growth right
bad.
there, So there you go.
You
Growth.
said something that made me think of, like, because I wonder that too, like, okay, I got this covered. Now I got to fix this. Now I got to fix this. And the other day I was thinking, like, when am I going to be goddamn done fixing everything? Because I'm so goddamn tired of being such a fuck up. And then I realized, oh yeah, you'll be done when you're dead. Because
you said die alone too, and I'm sitting here thinking, hey, we all die alone, with partners or not. We all die alone. We all walk that last part of the journey alone completely. So you got that going for you. The whole human experience is dying alone, whether they've lived their lives with somebody or not.
So so acceptance of that, and
there
then
you go.
Move on accordingly.
Yeah, I guess because it's I keep looking for this like day of utopia when I'm like, yay. And it's not coming. God damn it! And
it'll come in like little waves.
Maybe that's a good way to put it. Like little, like the happiness thing at the beginning of the thing. Like little recognitions of, hey, I feel good about this, or I grew. Like I didn't see this before. I see it now. Like that does make a person happy.
There's like this sense of peace and just kind of like, okay, here's where we are. These are our faults. We both accept these faults about each other.
Yeah.
And we're both, cognizant of these faults in ourselves. And so we're trying not to like, be as faulty all the time. But like we recognize that when we are faulty, we're like, okay, yeah, my bad.
I think that's huge.
Part of the key too is you're not looking for happiness. You're looking for contentedness.
Content.
You're looking for content where you can like sit down at the end of the day and go, all right.
Yeah.
Because happiness, fuck, right?
And happens. It happens sometimes.
But what's interesting too,
Yeah,
like
there's happy moments.
maybe you guys have this experience. If you talk to somebody you haven't talked to in a long time and you're kind of summarizing your life recently, and you might tell them a couple little anecdotes about some bullshit that went down. I talked to my mom recently and I was like, I like my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like overall, like realizing I don't talk to her that often. And if I'm thinking about like what I've talked about, you know, in the 2 weeks or a month since we've talked or whatever, since we've actually had like a long conversation, overall, I like my life.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the self-care is about. It's like, what steps do I need to take to get to the point where overall, yeah, there's some shit in there, right?
But overall,
I like my life.
Yeah.
You know, my everyday. I'm not trying to hide from my existence.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, no matter what, there's going to be something. There's not going to be this like perfect existence.
No.
You know, let's say you do kind of reach this like, you know, pinnacle where you're like, yes, everything like makes sense. I have retired with enough money. I still have this partner that like we totally dig each other and we're able to just kind of live comfortably. I mean, I'm a little bored, but like you find ways to like, you know, keep yourself entertained. But then you start thinking like, especially as you get older, it's like, okay, well then health definitely takes like a major, you know, step up and, you know, you got to maintain that shit. And so, yeah, there's never going, I mean, no matter how like fuck yeah, everything is awesome right now, there's always kind of something else, but it's all about how you deal with it. If you don't let that like completely like some people fall the fuck apart when something doesn't go right and they're like they want to lament and like murmur about it, and it's like, oh my god, like yeah, we're all dealing with shit, babe. But like you're the only one that's sitting here like wallowing in it, but then you're also like dragging us into it. It's like,
yeah, I think that makes me think of another point. Like I think there's a big difference between acknowledging and sitting in your shit and wallowing in it and bringing everyone else into it too. I mean, you can sit in it and acknowledge it, but you don't have to like wallow in it and bring everyone else in it either. When you acknowledge it, then hey, do something.
So then no who flung poo kind of situations. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, because that's, I don't know the proper words right now for that.
You keep saying shit and I like it.
Sorry, I really like that it rhymes with sit. I just
know.
discovered that
Sit
today.
she likes, is that alliteration?
She likes
It's
rhyming.
rhyming.
And it's both.
It's both.
Holy shit, guys. It's both.
It's both.
I mean, I've been reading too many Dr. Seuss books, but I feel like it does kind of, like, if you're willing to and able to do that, maybe part of doing that is also acknowledging that part of your shit is bringing other people into it too.
Yes, that's how some people cope with it, by bringing everyone else along.
And they're not
with it.
sitting in that. They're not looking at that.
Yeah, some of us cope by pushing everyone out of our shit pot and saying, you don't get to see what my shit is.
You don't need to see this. Baby.
You don't need to
This
see
is-
this.
No.
Because raw honesty is the podcast is the exception to my usual rules. And like part of doing this with you and having these conversations, and whether it was way back talking to RG or talking to Matt or talking to Liz or sitting here talking to my dad, those are conversations I should be having out in the world all the time. You know, even now sitting with Amy and I have a lot of these conversations secretly when no one is listening except for maybe our toddlers, and thank God they don't know what we're saying yet.
Except for they repeat it all.
They're like, hey,
Yeah. You. Like this is something I'm working on doing, which is why I'm so happy to be a part of this as a project, because it's something I'm working on doing, because ordinarily I'm like, you don't get to see what I've got under here.
what? As like on the sleeve as you are? Really?
It's usually a pretty small group that gets to see that on the sleeve kind of stuff.
Okay.
This one sitting right here. You, obviously, we've had a lot of conversations at this point.
Yeah, Liz.
You know, Liz,
Your platonic
my
life partner.
platonic life partner, Liz. Exactly. But I've not been good at that, you know? Like when my marriage ended, hey, in case you haven't figured that out, that's what I've been talking around, right, for several episodes now.
Yeah, you never actually said it.
Hey, my marriage ended.
If you refer to episode 1 and 2, where she's kind of dancing around something, like, oh, this will make sense. You're like, oh, that's what she was talking about.
Yeah, you can hear the beginnings, the rumblings of my marriage ending.
It happens.
But yeah, like when that happened, people who were close to me, I just did air quotes, by the way. I realize this is audio. Who should have been close to me, like my sister,
Yeah.
like my parents in some ways, had no idea how things were for me at home
Yeah.
because I hide it. Right? I hide my shit.
You do hide it. Wow.
And that's not how I want to live my life going forward. And part of the self-care is like, how do I share in a way that is not launching shit at people, right? Like what Amy is talking about, you know?
Sit in it, but don't launch it.
How do I find it? How do I sit in it? Share it a little. Here's my little chamber pot.
Have a look, but just don't touch.
No trying to fix it. It's mine. I just want you to know this is what I got going on. Like you're talking about, you were able to figure out, you know, where the roots were of some of these things that bothered you in relationships.
Yeah.
And then show it. Like, oh, they were talking about your
Hey,
hair.
listen.
I'm gonna put it away.
Here's where I'm damaged. If you could like not pour salt on it.
Yes.
That would be great.
And that's a part of self-care. No salt scrubs on my damaged shit.
Thank you so much. Here's a little wound here that's it's healing. It's like piecemeal, but if you could just like not take the scab off and pour salt into it, that would help. Yeah. Thank you so much. But then sometimes they do.
Yeah.
Even though you tell them, listen, here's my thing, and they completely ignore it.
What is it you told me once upon a time?
I'm full of it, so I'm sure I've said many things to you.
I've repeated it to myself in my head a number of times when I'm sitting in my shit. Did you know that? Did you know that you have that level of like esteem in my life, right? That I repeat things you've told me in my head sometimes. Humans got a human.
You've told me that.
Yeah, that's
it's trickled down onto me.
She stole it. Hey, copyright. Yeah, humans got a human.
And sometimes we fuck shit up.
Yes.
Like sometimes it's legitimately like I'm not the best person I should be all the time. So even though I know it's your shit, I might transgress it without even remembering that I'm doing it because I am too focused on my own shit, right?
Yeah.
God, we say shit a lot in this one. This is the podcast.
This is going to get a disclaimer.
Linda's talk about shit.
Literal.
But sometimes too, I think people transgress it because there are people out there who are assholes and they rub salt in wounds because it's fun. Mm-hmm. You know, it's fun to realize you have that level of power over somebody else that you can hurt them.
Probably because they haven't looked at their own shit.
Yeah.
Or been willing enough to acknowledge what it does to other people.
And then there are humans that are human.
Yeah. There's sometimes humans forget how to human.
Because there's a lot of, as a human, there's a lot of shit going on in your head. There's a lot of stuff you have to deal with every day, you know?
Ooh, talk about the communication thing real quick, about what people do when they try to communicate, where one person says the thing. I love that when you explain this to me.
Oh,
I
don't know. Is this psychology?
Yes. When you were like like when you and I are having a conversation, right? So there are the things I'm saying. They're what is it you say? There's the intention behind the things coming out of my mouth. Go ahead, take over because you're good at it.
But you're doing a great job.
No, but please continue.
So
give us context.
Tensions that you have to say float out of your mouth, and they float around, and then the recipient receives them and attaches their own shit. I'm sorry, I need better words.
No, it's working. It's good.
Their own shit to what you just said. So then it kind of mangles it all up, and you don't, you know, is it really what the speaker intended? Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is. Sometimes, you know, that's why it's so freaking confusing when you talk to people, you know, because you have to deal with, each person has to deal with their own stuff, you know.
They have their own interpretation. They have their own lens that they're looking at things from. And so, I mean, that's something that I'm always mindful of when approaching other people, because everyone's fighting their own battle and taking their own journey.
If you don't know what twist they're going to put on it or what thing they attach to it.
Yeah, so it's like tread lightly.
Most people aren't self-caring at all, aren't caring for themselves at all. I mean, it's like like we said this before, you know, like if you're not seeing a therapist and you need to be, right?
Most people are out here walking wombs, like walking
wombs.
open wombs.
Well, that's one thing when you mentioned self-care, to me, that's one thing that really stands out for me is that it's okay to take care of yourself physically. In fact, like it's expected. So, hey, you're supposed to drink lots of water every day. You're supposed to exercise. You're supposed to stay away from germs. You know, that's socially acceptable. But going to a therapist or, you know, looking at your own shit mentally is not socially acceptable, or it's not held as highly as physical maintenance is, you know. And I wish it was, because I feel like it's just as maybe even more important.
Yeah.
Because they're connected, you know, physical and mental things are connected. So,
and like something you said earlier, and you know, something that someone kind of called out when I you reposted what you were talking about. It's a privilege.
Oh yeah,
yeah, it is.
You know, not everyone can afford to go to a, you know, psychiatrist, psychologist, analyst, or whatever. If this was the 80s, it'd be an analyst.
I like just the analyst. That's adorable.
Yeah.
I was thinking of Fame when the little guy with the curly hair, he was like, oh, my analyst said.
Yeah.
So, showing my age.
I thought about Jeopardy from Saturday Night Live, the rapist, right?
Oh, I love that one.
That
one's
therapist.
That's pretty funny though.
The penis mightier.
Anal bum cover.
We just totally devolved into Saturday Night Live jokes.
But no, like I fully recognize having the time to like actually sit and reflect on your own shit. Like that's a privilege. Most people are out here, single parents trying to raise kids, working 2 jobs. Like no, you're out here hustling, trying to like keep food on the table. No, you don't have time to just sit and like pontificate.
Which is why the healthcare system is broken, because as Amy is saying, they are tied to each other. It shouldn't be a privilege. It should be a right, that if you know that is the type of care that you need, you should be able to walk in and receive that care in the same way that you would walk into an urgent care and, you know.
Yeah. So there's 2 types of oppressions in regarding to self-care. It's that, yes, healthcare does not always cover mental health. And then B, you know, maybe you have healthcare or don't, or have insurance or don't, but you don't even have the time to go.
Yes.
You know, you're like bouncing between jobs and picking your kids up and all that stuff. So yeah, maybe you have insurance, but you don't even have the time to go.
So then how do you work it in a way that you don't bend yourself, you know, as somebody that's working 2 jobs, and raising a tiny human? And granted, I've got I'm very privileged with a fairly flexible schedule. Like I'm lucky as shit, and I got a good co-parent.
Yeah.
You know? I think one of the things is, how do you then develop a plan for self-care if you cannot do therapy that doesn't also then break the bank because you're leaning on all of these consumerist bullshit ways of caring for yourself? Like what then does it look like, right?
Yeah. I don't know. They don't even have time to think about that.
I know.
And I feel like
the cycle
in society, if you do take time to be by yourself, it's perceived as selfish.
Yeah.
Rather than like, hey, I'm taking care of myself so that I can take care of other people. It's perceived as selfish.
Especially if you're a woman. It's selfish weakness.
Yeah, weakness is,
Yes,
I was telling you earlier, it really pisses me off that nobody, when you get a cold or you get the flu, nobody says, you goddamn imbecile, you got a cold, you know?
Yeah.
But if you have like a mental issue or you break down crying somewhere, people are like, oh, goddamn, that weak person.
Yeah.
But sometimes that happens if you don't have the time to take care of yourself.
There's more sympathy for the, I guess, like physical health issue than there is for the mental health issue. They're like, oh, there's like stigma attached to it. It's like, oh, I want nothing to do with you. I mean, I've done it myself.
I know that I have too. And I feel ashamed to say this, but there were times when I felt so depressed and down that I was like, I wish I just had cancer because it would be okay. You know, like the world would say it's okay.
Yeah. the world, because people's response to what you're dealing with is a major factor in that as well. Like, you get a pass if you're dealing with something physical, but like, you're a quote crazy person if you're dealing with something else, and that's fucked up.
You can't call in sick to work and say, hey, I'm overwhelmed, I haven't had time to sleep. That's part of self-care, right? I haven't had time to eat. You can't do that unless you've got something physical. Then you can, and it's acceptable. But.
So here's the takeaway. Whatever you are dealing with in life, today, if you have the means to do so, take care of it. If it's something that is going on mentally, go talk to someone, or at least start to sit with yourself and reflect. If it's something physical, go to a doctor, as my mom would always, hound me about going to a doctor, and I'm terrible about. Do that. If it's something that's physical that can be changed through diet, the things that you put into your body, make that change. That's something that, that I started a few years ago. It's like, holy shit, like, my body's like crumbling in on itself. Luckily I had a person in my life that was like, yo, you're falling apart. Here is, some possible, remedies or solutions to kind of help get you back on track. You either take it or I'm breaking up with you. I was like, ultimatum. And, not knowing, I didn't have a knowledge of what, food or medication and all that stuff does to a body. But then once I started doing that, and my whole my whole body changed. The way I was feeling, I was like, oh my God, I actually feel like a person again. I've not felt like actually physically okay in a number of years. And I didn't realize that. And some people are unwilling to do that. And I'm just saying, if you give two shits about yourself, I don't care how good that thing tastes or how allegedly good that thing makes you feel. Feeling healthy, completely trumps that. So please be good to yourself, be good to others. As you know, we're all out here fighting battles, and you never know what journey a person may be on. Take care of yourself and take care of those around you if you can. Linda, honey, baby, what are you doing? Rachel, you got a honey for us?
I really hate the fucking word strange. Please do not come up to me and tell me. I'm serious, man.
Strange?
Girl, I had a young man think that it was okay with me in his proximity of this discussion. I overheard this discussion. I don't think it was meant for me, but he knew I was there, talking about how every now and again you just got to get some strange.
What does that mean?
Strange pussy, Amy. It means strange pussy. Pussy is a pejorative
I got that.
for vagina.
Got it. Yeah.
Do we need any more?
I'm pretty naive, but I got
good?
that one. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You can't see it right now, but Amy is blushing, and it's the cutest thing ever. And kind of, I live
Go
my
on
life
with your strange.
to make her blush. Yeah. Do not use the word strange. That's so what I mean. I could get some snatch. I could get some strange. I cannot stand terminology like that. Just say, well, I was really looking forward to getting laid by someone that I did not know before. I mean, I don't know, but think of a different way to say
That particular way really irks you.
that particular terminology, honey, baby. If a young woman hears you say that you are out to get some strange, like,
you're the strange object
exactly
entering
trying to
a sacred
insert
place.
Itself into the secret garden.
Right.
All right.
Maybe you're the strange.
Maybe you are the strange. Exactly. Stop. Oh, just, honey, don't use that word.
Honey. Amy, you got a honey for us?
The only thing that I can think of is
pussy now. I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. All right.
Is Trump. It's Trump. That's the only thing I can think of right now. So there's too much. There's just too much.
Start.
No, but this could be like hours.
That's
so
fine.
I won't do that.
So start with honey. Honey,
listen.
Honey, listen. Do not fire your Secretary of State
I mean, he's fired everyone else. Like, what's
over a tweet.
Yeah, I mean, what's left to say about that?
The thing I'm still brewing on the
Yes.
thing.
Rachel, let her speak.
Sorry, I'm excited because I know what this is.
I'm still brewing on the thing that he said in response to the shooting, the high school shooting, Parkland shooting, and they had I think they called it a listen or something, where he was supposed to go listen to the people who were talking about gun control, and I think right after that happened, that day that happened, I was driving in my car and I heard on the radio him say, "Oh, well, we're going to keep guns out of the hands of sickos." And so I guess him using that kind of terminology, that's a honey baby then. Like, that's not going to help anything.
Yeah.
Like calling people sickos.
Words mean things.
You say he was talking about wanting to reopen.
Oh, yeah. He did say something about reopening mental institutions and putting people in mental institutions. And I was thinking, well, I think you're the first person who would be in there.
Right.
I was just really angry that day at the stigma he's perpetuating.
And the stigma that he perpetuates for every thing. He's trash.
I'm trying to let go of it, but it's still lingering.
Which means we just got to keep fighting on the local front. I mean, that's what we can do. We can sit and wallow in our disgust for the president, or you can actually take action and get involved with your local elections, because that's where they started. Mm-hmm. Tea Party, they started locally, and look where they got. Mm-hmm. So let's do the same to, get back on track. My honey is Miss Wes Goodman, representative out of the good state of Ohio. Wes, honey, baby, you are this ultra conservative, anti-LGBT politician who is out here talking about how all the gays are going to hell, all these things. But baby, what did you get caught doing in your office? I don't know. Fucking another guy because
getting some strange
from another dude because doth protest too much. I am so sick of you people who go out of your way to declare how other people are evil or sinful and they must be demolished or whatever. Meanwhile, you're out here doing the same thing. And so anytime that you see anyone in your life out here marching, well, not marching because but anytime you see someone out here just fighting for this hate in any way, that's because they've got something else to hide.
I feel like that happens so much.
So often, the biggest anti-LGBTQ LMNOP folks are the biggest closet queens out here. And we see right through you. Quit your shit. Or, talk about not actually dealing with your own
do
shit.
some fucking self-care, man.
Do some self-care. Baby, be you.
Acknowledge your own shit.
You're free to be you. You are the only one that's holding yourself back and trying to uphold these outdated rules and societal norms that allegedly we're supposed to be living by, and we're not. We're not. We are free to be who we are. And just because you have, denied yourself the ability to be who you are, and you felt like you need to shame others for being who they are, look where he got you. Your career, your family, your like all of this is, kind of, I wouldn't say destroyed, but it's definitely the family part. It's like sitting in a state of limbo. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do now? And you did all of this for what? Who are you trying to impress? Mm-hmm. Who are you trying to, suck up to while you're busy sucking? Okay, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. I want to, but I'm not gonna go there. But honey, all y'all out here doth protesting too much. Your day's coming. Your day's coming where your true self is going to be known to the world, and you're going to have to deal with it. You can either deal with it now in a private way, or you can deal with it publicly. Which one is worse? I think publicly, because I
would think so. I think you might be right.
Yeah. But that's just me. That's just us. So on that note, thank you. That was a couple Lindas. You can keep up with us on Facebook at a couple Lindas. You can go to our website, couplelindas.com, or you can email us at coupleoflindas@gmail.com. A big thank you again to Rachel and Amy.
Thank you for having us.
Oh my God, Jinx, you want me a Coke?
Thank you for having me. That was really nice.
Yeah. And we'll see you next time on A Couple of Lindas.